all, and thank you very much for joining me for what is now episode number 20 of Mantell Associates, which has flown by. I'm honored today to be joined by Jeff Galvin, who is the CEO of American Gene Technologies based out of Maryland in the US. Jeff has been the CEO there for over 13 years and has been building the organization up. And they're a company which are doing phenomenal things in terms of cell and gene therapy and even more. So, Jeff, absolute pleasure just to have you on here. And I know that just before we came on, you were telling me a little bit more about the organization, a little bit more about some of the great work that you guys are doing, in particular in the HIV space at the moment, which sounds incredible. It would be great if you could tell us a little bit more about your organization, about your position there, and everything like that.
Sure, pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
Pleasure.
So I'm the CEO of American Gene Technologies, and as you mentioned, we've been around for about 13 years now. And the intent of the company was 13 years ago, I learned about viral vectors, and I came to understand that we can edit the DNA in cells. Coming out of the software world, which was my previous career that I retired from, I saw that these viral vectors as sort of being diskettes, that now we can go in there and we can correct errors or enhance DNA for better health. And my reaction was, what can't we do with this? This is the software revolution for the next 100 years. And so I set about to become the Microsoft of that. And to me, what that meant is that we would make a set of reusable tools and components that you could mix and match to cure a myriad of diseases. So it would be somewhat like, to mix the metaphors here, an iPhone, where if you wanted to cure a disease, you'd write an app. Now, of course, you can't get there in a day, right? But in over 13 years, we've got a tremendous IP portfolio that are enabling for creating cures to really serious human diseases. And we're starting to use it ourselves to prove the value of that platform, right? You know, if you go back in time to the last software revolution, would you really plan to write an application without an operating system? No, of course not. And you, in the future, in this field, you won't either. And you won't think of viral vectors as being a platform. You'll think of them as being paper tape or punch cards or diskettes or CDs, and you'll go, they're nothing unless they have software on them. And the software will be layered, right? It'll be tools and components, and then it'll be an application on top. Okay, so we want to do that tools and components layer, but now we want to prove it by doing applications. And not to bury the lead here, but we're in the midst of a clinical trial for an HIV cure, which I think has a 95% chance of showing efficacy this year, efficacy signal sufficient that we will know that we can cure HIV. And so, but this was only possible because we had all of this time behind us, deep into all of the details of gene and cell therapy for many, many different diseases, drawing out the common elements and putting them into a toolbox. And this is a toolbox that won't just unlock things for us, but hopefully will unlock things for every company around the world. Anybody that wants to solve a disease will be able to get there 80% faster at 10% of the cost, with only 10% of the risk overall, because the visibility, once you look at the tool set and you say, okay, is it within scope to deliver that therapeutic gene at therapeutic levels in a targeted manner safely to the cells that need it? Just a thought experiment based on the tool set that you have. If your answer is yes, you got an 85% chance of getting there. But the best news is $200,000 later, you have an experimental drug that you can test in animals, and you can make your go, no-go decision based on whether you can anticipate problems in the clinical path that you believe might be showstoppers, and you could turn your attention to one of 10,000 other diseases that you could cure on this platform, right? So this, to me, is the fundamental driver of the whole mission statement at AGT, which is, once I had, kind of encountered the viral vector and understood what it could be, my goal was to reduce suffering and reduce death from serious human diseases by leveraging the power of gene and cell therapy in the most efficient way possible. Efficiency is what it's all about. And I think efficiency is what we're achieving at this point. And now keep your fingers crossed. If you read at, by the end of this year that we have efficacy signal in an HIV clinical trial, then it's not just that we can cure HIV. It's that part of the platform can cure hepatitis B, human papillomavirus, HTLV, CMV, Epstein-Barr, herpes, so many other chronic viral infections, because there's elements in there that, are useful in any chronic viral infection. And now you just need to look at, okay, what is the change we need to make to the immune system that would make a hepatitis B cell more effective at controlling hepatitis B so it's unable to do the same level of liver damage that it would normally do, or HTLV to control it at levels where it won't expand and cause a T-cell lymphoma. And if we look at our tool set and go, yeah, we probably could do that, then, that's 85% certain on day one. And we've accelerated the path by, really a factor of 10 to get there. We're estimating that in the future, and this is going to blow your listeners' minds. I don't expect anybody to believe me on this, but I believe I will be borne out on this point. We will be able to cure nearly any monogenic loss of function disorder, because that's another part of our platform, from idea to first human efficacy in 2 years and $10 million. Wow. You think about what an asset, you have if you have first human efficacy, even in something that is a rare disease, right? Look at the Avexis example. 1 in 5,000 boys is born without a gene that causes spinal muscular atrophy, right? The loss of that function. And they have replaced that gene effectively with, so Avexis made this drug and sold it to Novartis. And there's basically a cure for spinal muscular atrophy. There's kids running around today that would have died by age 2, never having learned to sit up, roll over, or even turn their own head, because of that one gene. And now it's been cured. That was an $8 billion drug for Novartis. Now, I think that, the drugs of the future won't sell at that price because they'll be too easy to make. This industry is going to be too competitive. But this is all good for the patients. And when you look at the amount of money that's being spent in monogenic diseases out there, just doing palliative treatments, there is $2 to $4 trillion out there to capture. $2 to $4 trillion a year. The whole pharma industry is only like $1.5 trillion, right? I don't know exactly what it's at today, but we're talking about a huge expansion for pharmaceutical companies. This is something that everyone from top to bottom, from the CROs and the CMOs to the pharmaceutical companies to the technology companies, all the way up to the large pharmas, should be incredibly excited about this opportunity to bring powerful, actually curative treatments to the market cost effectively, relieving patient suffering while enjoying I believe a 10x expansion, up to 10x expansion in the pharmaceutical markets going forward.
Yeah, that sounds absolutely insane. And one thing that I absolutely love with the way that you're going over it and the way that you're talking about it and what you're doing is you are clearly so passionate about your organization and what your company are doing. It is unbelievable. Yeah. And you sound like the sort of man who's going to let nothing get in your way whatsoever. Now, what I'm curious of here is obviously the world changed in the past year. Loads of crap has happened. Everything has gone kind of, a lot of people working remotely, a lot of people doing this. Life has not been how we know it. But at the same time, everyone's talking about COVID, everyone's talking about this virus, this vaccine, etc. But you're on a mission to cure all of these diseases and find a way. Being the CEO of AGT, how have you been able to guide the organization through this last year? And how's the organization managed to come to this breaking point with HIV right now, where you're so close, despite all of this?
So COVID wasn't as big a challenge as you would imagine for this company, because we're a virus company, right? So we understand how to work with viruses. We understand what the dangers are. As a matter of fact, we understand, all the technologies in viruses so well that one of the things that I did was open up a COVID molecular PCR testing facility in our company so that everybody in the company could have a test 3 times a week and we could lock down our, entire building in a way where everybody felt safe. Now we still wear masks in the hallway. And, my philosophy has always been that in a creative company like this, and we say AGT is where creativity cures. That's what it's all about. You said, I sound like somebody that won't let things get in the way. Another way of saying that is that I'll find creative solutions to get to, from point A to point B, even if the straight line isn't going to work. Right. And creativity is what overcomes all of the obstacles. It's what solves all of the challenges. And so if it's possible, and if you are passionately committed to something, then you will eventually get there. Now, when I started my 13-year journey on this, I thought I would be at the point that we're at now, like 7-8 years. Okay. Well, that's biotech for you. Right? And I got a lot of curveballs, and also I got a lot of pushback from the status quo. Like, you'd be really amazed. Like, the biggest challenge of doing this is that nobody believes it, and deep down, nobody really wants it. Everybody wants the status quo. If you're a genius in the status quo, you don't want the status quo changing. So the analysts don't want to hear anything new, right? They don't want to dig deeply into something that seems really disruptive. This seems so much to me like my history at Apple, when we showed, the graphic user interface to the top analyst in the PC industry, and he just went, "This will never sell." I'm not kidding you. This is crazy. What the guy said. And his reason was that he said the way that people use PCs is they lean back in their chair and they put the keyboard in their lap, so they don't want to keep having to lean forward to work with a mouse. I mean, can you imagine the cell phone with a C prompt on it? How far would that have gone, right? So, we had a vision that we knew was better, but we had pushback from everybody. What about IBM? IBM didn't want to know that, the whole PC industry was changing, that the whole computer industry was changing, that PCs were going to be a dominant force in computing. Okay, but IBM figured it out, and now they installed Dell computers. But, have you ever heard of Burroughs?
No, never.
Second largest computing company on earth before the PC.
And I haven't got a clue who they are. What?
I mean, that's the point. So do pharma companies want this? Well, I think, if you asked each individual pharma executive and every pharma employee and middle manager and scientist, they'd go, absolutely, we want a cure for cancer. We want a cure for HIV. They'd say that. But their economic model is built on something else that's going to be highly disruptive if they have to change it into the idea of a competitive industry where you have to keep bringing out additional solutions in order to maintain your market cap, to maintain your revenue stream. You have to be building better and better and better at cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. What does that sound like? The computer industry, right?
What I absolutely love here.
That's what's about to happen here.
Is that I was talking with the CEO of a software and CDMO organization, which is big in the tech space at the moment for pharmaceuticals, Resilience, who you may have heard of, doing huge amounts of work in gene therapy, viral vectors, and they've got like 800 million funding, looking to acquire sites everywhere. And it goes exactly the same in terms of what you're saying. Is everyone saying that software, that platform, that way of working is not possible, you can't do it, and now they're completely growing in the direction that you guys are doing it as well. Sure. People don't like change, no matter what the industry, no matter where you are. My question to you
remember,
is,
they're a real software play, right? They're actually using computers. I'm just likening the human cell to an organic computer that works on ACTG, right? Instead of zeros and ones, like your desktop computer. And if you alter the ACTGs in your DNA, you get a different result. Your genes are just commands. And so we now can look at your body as trillions of organic computers collaborating to make you. They're communicating with electricity, with chemicals. They're much more sophisticated than your desktop computer. They have a command in each one of them that if you trigger that command, the cell will split into 2 copies of itself. Like, try that with your cell phone. That would be sweet. That'd put Apple out of business real fast, right? So this is the point, is that it's like we inherited the most sophisticated computer network on earth with no manual. But at this point, because of, the huge investments in things like the Human Genome Project, right? Where they just said, screw it, we're going to sequence the whole genome, no matter how much it costs. And really between two different companies, it was like $6 billion to get one genome. Now it costs like $1,000 to get a full genome, right? But that's that precipitous drop in the cost of sequencing and all of the reagents and all of the equipment that goes around this, including like PCR and stuff like that, plus the training of a huge number of PhDs in the, all of the molecular biology of the cell, just released an explosion of information about genetics and its relationship to what I call systems biology, like how does your body work? Now we can do experiments where we alter genes and see what the effect is, right, in the cells. And now we also have a third planet in this, in this planetary collision between genetics and biology. We have the editing capability of genetics. And that editing capability is getting more sophisticated every year. This is why I say this is the computer software revolution for the next 100 years. Now, everything you're talking about in real software will merge eventually with this, right? Because AI will be very valuable in finding relationships, in this massive data set that we're generating in biology, right? And, simulating things. And, imagine the FDA one day where you submit a drug and the drug is basically like, if you look at our patents, they might have 70 pages of ACTG with the details of a particular viral, genetic construct that we're delivering with a lentiviral vector, right? So you'll just submit that on diskette to the FDA, and they'll come back with a tiny little list of little safety things you need to check before you're allowed to go into the clinic. And why would that list be tiny? Because every single experiment on the human computer tells you something about how the human computer works that applies to every other experiment. And so as the knowledge of how your body works and how genetics impact that expands, well, the FDA will become smarter about this too. They'll use products like what you were talking about, and they will do an in silico, simulation of your drug in a computer model of the human body. And they'll go, here are the hotspots we don't know. Everything else we know is safe.
Yeah.
And your testing might be, 5% of what it would have been in a traditional drug, where they have no clue how this chemotherapeutic is going to affect every single cell in your body, because the cell, when you're working on it from the outside, is so complicated. It's like the difference between programming your computer and pouring chemicals on top of your computer for trying to get a good result, right? They don't know until you experiment and do, 30,000 patients for a vaccine or 1,000 patients for a normal chemotherapeutic. They don't have good confidence that there isn't going to be an adverse event hidden somewhere in the off-target, sort of effects of the drug. And that's the power of gene and cell therapy. I guess you probably understand this already, but
yeah,
we can make targeted therapeutics that tend to go to the cells that need them, ignoring all the rest of the cells, and even have on-off switches so that once they get into the cell, they can test an enzyme or a protein and determine whether that cell has a disease or the cell is the correct tissue or the correct type, and only turn on the drug in those instances.
It's absolutely insane. What are some of the kind of biggest challenges that you faced in the 13 years coming out? I know you gave the example of like IBM, Apple, all of that sort of stuff. What sort of setbacks have you personally had in trying to take the company forward?
Well, I think that, there's sort of the typical challenges, raising enough money to feed a big organization like this, right? And, biotech requires a lot of investment before there's any payoff. So I took a lesson from my Apple days, and I said, evangelism will bring you your supporters, right? And so I said, okay, I believe my vision for the future of gene and cell therapy, for the future of the pharmaceutical market, is better than average, right? Maybe, way better than average, especially people that are just completely enamored or stuck in, calcified into traditional models and traditional types of drug development modalities, right? I just said gene and cell therapy is a whole new thing. It's more like software than it is like the last, biotech revolution, right? And so I went out there and I just told my vision, and I projected, where this industry would go. as a, just speaking from the heart, the same way you're hearing me talk right now. In other words, I'm just telling you what I believe. That's it. So you go, well, he believes what he believes. And if it makes sense to you, right, this has the effect of, evangelicals frequently associated with religion, but it really means that telling your truth, and then it's like a light that will attract people that resonates with, and then those will be the people that will support it. And that's how we raised all our money. Okay. So it wasn't a VC, because the VCs, when I had my original vision, the VCs were like, oh, gene and cell therapy, that already failed last decade. That's over, right?
Little do they know now. I mean, come on.
Yeah. Well, they've all got, investments in it now. But I think that they're missing, maybe some of the big things, like who will be the Apple, who will be the Microsoft of this software revolution for the future? When I look out there, I don't see anybody doing it like us. What I see is everybody just building right on the hardware. They're like, oh, AAV is a platform. Now we'll just put another gene on top of it, right? But we're looking at things that are so much more sophisticated because, monogenic diseases are obvious. Just replace the gene, the problem will go away, right? If you got
that is absolutely fascinating to me. Who did you go pitching to right at the start? Because obviously you needed the capital, you needed the money. You didn't get it from VC. How did you go about getting all of that funding, getting your vision out there, your idea, which at the time seemed crazy to a lot of people, selling gene therapy, gene and cell therapy, getting it out there? Who did you go to? How did you first get it going?
Well, so this is the second attribute of me besides, just being just so caught up in my own vision for the future and so excited about, how much great stuff this will unlock for humankind, right? The second thing is I'm a friendly guy, right? I'll talk to anybody that'll talk to me. I was in a cab, and I was talking to somebody who was like, hey, I know a lot of rich people. Can I help you raise money? I was like, yeah, sure. Set up meetings. And, it just two people told two people and told two people. And
seriously,
probably had to raise we've raised $60 million so far, which is, not gargantuan, for ventures.
All from taxi journeys or?
No. I mean, it's been all over the place. You just talk to anybody that'll talk to you. I met lots of people on airplanes, and the thing is that somebody once said to me, everybody you meet can do something for you. Now, the way that she meant it was a little bit in a sociopathic way, she was looking on, sort of the, what's the Gone in the Wind, I rely on the kindness of strangers, but it's true.
Yeah.
The point is that, you have a contact for me. This podcast will be seen by some people. Some people will get excited about this. They'll go, I've been thinking about that. And I think, and boy, Jeff states it pretty well. And I think he's on track here. And this sounds intriguing. And one of them may contact us. You never know. And so, at this point, we have so much momentum. We have so much news. Even people just contact us on the contact form on the website and end up as investors. But it really went from, just talking to everybody until it just continued to get momentum until one day I was talking to one person who was at one of our early investors was at a tour at Disneyland in Southern California, a VIP tour. Mm-hmm. And the guy was giving them the tour around, like a middle manager at Disney that was showing them the tunnels underground and stuff like that. Asked him, so what do you do? He goes, oh, I'm a biotech investor. And the guy says to him, what do you think about this company, AGT? Now, how the heck did he hear about us? Right? But the point is I'd been in LA so much talking to everybody that would listen to me is somehow it permeated out to, the underground tunnels of Disneyland. And this investor's like, I'm an investor already in AGT. I think it's pretty darn good.
Oh, that is absolutely insane. And thank you so much for going through everything that you've gone through already. I wanted to ask you as well, in terms of when we work with biotech organizations, pharmaceutical companies, clear-cut stuff, their growth kind of strategy for the future is very, very clear-cut. How do you go about planning your growth strategy? What does it look like for your organization? And what are your plans for the future, for not only the cell and gene therapy space, but also the technology, software, everything?
Okay. So just in case I drift into numbers and forecasts for the future, I need to give a disclaimer that, this is not a solicitation, and none of the things that I'm saying are guaranteed, but this is what I believe. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into that. So first of all, what I intend to do is become the Microsoft of this industry with the Apple attitude, the Apple corporate culture. We are mission driven. We have a better vision. We have this dedication to the actual customer, the patient, and a focus on them and a very clear idea of how to lift them up. Okay. And I think that between the idea of having a layered model of this new software industry, where we've now got something that's been valued at $2.4 billion worth of components, patents,
wow,
right, that can be combined into a myriad of different drugs that are enabling and blocking in a whole bunch of different areas, right, that I think we've done a lot of progress on the Microsoft business and technology model side. And we have the Apple attitude here. We just have a bunch of really smart, hardworking people that are passionate about making a difference for humankind. And none of this goes back to making money. It really is a focus on, the fulfillment of lifting up other lives. Okay, so there is the overall model. Now, how will this roll out in terms of growing the company? Well, what I've always done is I've tried to keep the fixed burn low so that the ups and downs of raising money hand to mouth, wouldn't accidentally put us out of business. So we've done that now, consistently for 13 years. So that's not bad. We got a good track record of that. And we do have a low burn rate, and we use outside vendors when it's not core to our business. So you'll see that all of our patents are completely owned by us, completely developed internally. And, but, if we need to get a test validated, we can go to a CRO. If we need to get viral vector made, we go to a CMO. So, we understand this is where we're contributing in this overall value stack that is being created for the patient. So that's, how we sort of manage our money. Now, we have gotten to the point where we're developing assets. We've got a cure for phenylketonuria. This is the second largest monogenic disease out there. So it's highly valuable, and we've got data now.
That's unreal. Huge congratulations.
Yeah. And we've got a cure for HIV, but it's in the clinic. So we're going to be getting data on that soon. So, okay, so how do we grow this company in the future? So my dream is this, and I think it's possible to pull this off. If HIV works, well, that's a liquidity event for all the people that got into this for the money. And we can go ahead and pay them off, and we can continue as a private company and really try to fulfill the mission of creating the most efficient environment for solving human disease, and to just bring that to the entire world. Now, we will go ahead and take sections of that we think are particularly valuable, just like Microsoft does, right? Microsoft Word is highly competitive. There's not another word processor out there. But how did they do that? They didn't just rest on their laurels on Word 1.0. No, what they did was they just kept jamming more and more functionality in it at the same price, and even making the pricing more accessible to the public to make sure that they could continue to dominate, because they understood the same thing that I tell everybody here, which is it doesn't matter if we solve HIV. We have to immediately solve it better, faster, cheaper. Otherwise, if we don't obsolete ourselves, somebody else will do it for us, right?
Absolutely.
And this is the reality going forward. I mean, this is the true disruption in the pharmaceutical industry that I believe is coming. And I think that we are ready for it. And I think that everybody else has to get ready for it, because it is just a reality of nature. And if we learned anything from COVID, you can only hold back nature for so long before it wins, right?
100%.
Before it makes itself known. So, it's not me doing this. It is the reality that all of these discoveries are coming together to create a possibility. Now, I saw that possibility back in 2007, right? And I think a lot of people saw that possibility in the last few years. But, it gave me time to really get this organization going and to build that incredible portfolio of IP that I have. So what I'll do is, the HIV thing, maybe we can sell it to Gilead. Like, what's Gilead going to do if HIV is cured? 3/4 of their revenue is HIV treatment. It's an existential situation for them.
Insane.
What's the price on this? Well, for once, a pharmaceutical company will be in the position of an ordinary patient. Buy or die. right? We got a drug for you. It's your only hope for your continued existence, right? And, so we're going to negotiate a price where for the first time ever, maybe Gilead is on, the side of, less powerful at the table even. I mean, can you imagine
focusing on cure, on outright cure as well, which is the most important thing. And that's what I love about everything that you said. It's about finding the absolute cure. Something I wanted to touch on.
If you don't mind,
go on.
Let me just add one thing to that, because see, Gilead and none of these pharmaceutical companies should be scared of the cure of HIV. Of course they are, because they're thinking back to the cure for hepatitis C and going, oh, what a disaster that was, right? It brought the market cap of Gilead up to 160 billion, and then it dropped down to 60 billion again. And while that drop is a characteristic of curing a disease, and so that's all they can remember, right? But that is not the case. If we cure HIV, first of all, our cure relies on you having some HIV T cells in your body, which anybody that's never had HIV has HIV-specific CD4 positive T cells. We can pull them out, modify them so they're immune to HIV. These T cells, if they're immune to HIV, they can just do their job. They can clear HIV as easily as you clear a cold with your cold T cells, because the HIV doesn't have the advantage of being able to infect and deplete your protection, right? So that's what we're doing. So you have to have HIV T cells. Well, the first T cells that get wiped out by HIV are what? Your HIV T cells. So anybody that's had HIV, anybody that's caught HIV already, needs to be on antiretrovirals for 1 to 3 years. And only 1 in 3 people in insured markets is on antiretrovirals. So their market could triple, right? So Gilead, if they bought the cure and brought it out as fast as they could, they wouldn't be hurting their revenue. They might be tripling their revenue instead, right? And so, if right now they're making $15 billion a year roughly in antiretroviral therapy sales, well, what if that was $30 billion a year? So $15 billion in revenue, where the pill costs a penny to make and they sell it for $60, right? I think that's the number. They divide, $30,000 by 365. It's a lot of money per pill, right? It's highly, highly profitable business, right? Well, there's 3 times as many people who need that for the next 1 to 3 years, so that they can get ready for what they've always wanted, to finally be free of the enemy within.
Love it. What I got to ask you here as well is that when I can see talking to you that your mind works at 1 million miles per hour, you're a pioneer, you're an inventor as well with the stuff that's being done. And what's easy to forget is that you're a CEO full of a company, full of people who you're leading through it. So, I mean, how are you juggling everything in regards to that front? And on the leadership side, how are you managing your team to keep them involved in the business, to keep them as passionate as yourself, and to keep them pushing forward and striving for success the way that you are?
Well, part of that is the, sort of Apple mission-driven, vision-driven environment. And it has always been my sort of commitment, or my philosophy, that people do best when they know which direction they're going in, and they have autonomy and authority within their lane to come back and surprise you with something great. And probably the freest part of our organization is the pure R&D, right? It's like, I never go over there and tell them what to do. Sometimes I'll toss an idea in there, like I'll say, this part of gene and cell therapy would be important to have some functionality that does X, Y, or Z, and they'll think about it, but the point is that they come back with things that I could never have imagined, right? But it's all in line with my overall vision of where I knew the science was going anyway. So all I had to do was to get out there, in the front of the parade and, start marching and, and conducting, and they just followed along. And how could you not be passionate about the idea of saving lives,
absolutely.
right?
Yeah. I'm passionate about the idea just talking to you, because it has the potential to save lives and save people from disease, and also put a stop to a lot of the stuff that's going on in the pharmaceutical space. What I wanted to ask you as well was, as one kind of final question, I mean, everything that you've mentioned about AGT, about the story behind it, about everything has been absolutely fascinating. And mission of the organization and what you guys are building is phenomenal. And I guess, what advice would you give to other business leaders across the industry? And I want to refer this one to people who have got an idea, have got a dream, have got something that they want to build, hasn't necessarily been done many, many times before, etc., getting told no. What would your advice be to maybe the person that you were when you were at Apple and you're like, hey, I want to do this? Knowing the journey that you've had for the past 13 plus years, what advice would you give?
Well, I'd just say you need to be in love with your idea, first of all, because it is passion that gets you thinking about it 24/7. And I promise you, you can wake me up in the middle of the night and ask me a question about gene and cell therapy, about AGT or whatever, and I'm ready to answer it because I was probably dreaming about having that conversation when you woke me up, right? And so if you really are in love with your idea, then you will have the bandwidth. It won't be a 9 to 5 for you. It'll be a 24/7 thing, and you will start to gain a better vision and a better understanding of the landscape and the playing field so that you can plot strategies through it. I mean, I tell people that I'm, running this company is like playing 3D chess on 6, boards at once, right? Because you brought up some of the questions like, how do you lead an organization of cats, right? I mean, I'm herding the cats. I can't go out there and go, you will do this. That's not how you can get creative people to do their best, right? It wouldn't work on me. It won't work on them. It didn't work at Apple. Okay, so there you go. I mean, but then there's another one. It's the fundraising. That's another 3D chessboard. And then I've just got the shareholder stuff, the scientific vision, the branding of the company. I mean, it's just like there's so much to think about in this thing. But if you're in love with it, it's easy, right? Okay, then of course don't be discouraged by no. The point is that you see something that other people don't see, and they're not going to sit there and go, "Oh yeah, you're right," first time you say it to them. And some people, because they have a need to not believe it's going that direction, will just automatically say no right up until it, literally overwhelms them. Oh, masks don't make any difference until they get COVID. And then they're like, oh, I should have worn a mask, right? And you're going to see that in every conversation you have because everybody's got a dog in the fight, right? The investors have made their decisions. They have some sort of responsibility to their limited partners. So the VCs have a model. Everybody has a model. Everybody has an agenda. Everybody believes in what they're doing. And then you just have to find those rare people that are perfect to join you in your journey. So expect to hear no a lot. And I always tell people that if I had a nickel for every time somebody told me I was crazy in this business, I wouldn't have had to raise money. The nickels would have funded the company. Right. So, okay, and entrepreneurship is a risky business. It's like gambling, but you can increase the odds in your favor if you're really, really smart. And if you are clever about your strategy, and then you also need a little bit of luck. So, damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead. If you really have a better idea, okay, figure out how you're going to get it funded. That's going to be the biggest challenge, right? If you can't fund it out of your own pocket, you're going to have to figure out how to raise a lot of money. And whatever you think you're going to need, you're probably going to need double that, right? So, there's going to be a lot of challenges out there, but sit down and figure out, okay, what are all the challenges and get working on them. And if you love what you're doing, it won't be hard to do. And, it will turn out to be possible and you will get there.
Jeff, amazing words, amazing advice, amazing talking to you today. It's been so interesting finding out everything about your organization, find out about you as well. What a journey. I know the startup phase feeling of scraping around, doing all of that stuff. So I can relate to it in a completely different world and different location, but can relate to it. And I'm sure that a lot of people are. Jeff, I just want to say a huge thank you just for coming on today. And I look forward to talking to you very, very soon. It's a pleasure.
Well, my pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much. Cheers, man.
Take care.